All right, I know normally there would be other people here and they would be talking and they would be saying something, and then I would say this is ILNL, but no one's here because we had a snowstorm. So the best I can do for you is this. This is ILNL. Hey guys, welcome to ILNL. It's Tim. As you can see, all of my compadres are not here in studio, and they will be back pretty soon. But we're still going to rock and roll as we normally do here on the show. Thank you for being here. This is going to be something unique and different, something that's new that we kept talking about we're going to do for the show. And this is going to be like the first one, so this is really cool. It's an honor and a privilege for the guests that I have that we're going to do for our very first interview for 2021. So let me go on ahead and switch cameras and do this. This is going to be fun. All right, here we go. All right, so just last week, another like banger of an album was released, and I was like, I got to get these two on. So if you don't know, Forever Famicom was one of those landmark albums in the space of nerdcore or hip hop, underground rap, whichever way you want to call it. But the sole successor was released last week of Sega City, and I got to be in the release party. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let me go ahead and bring in my two guests. So first off, the lyricist, the one who put pen to pad when he heard the beats, the one that said, okay, I'm going to go into my childhood and I'm going to talk about how this thing called see, I get to do this. Genesis, like, was a monumental part of their growing up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to you Creative Mind Frame, CMF, or AKA One Up. How are you doing, my friend?
What's up? I'm doing great. Wearing my bachelor party
Love
shirt
it.
too and everything from 2018. My groomsman, my best man got those made, and we were all rocking little One Up Creative Mind Frame shirts.
Oh, that is so dope. Okay,
Doing great.
and longtime friend, I would say longtime listener. I don't even know if you watch or listen to our show, so I'm gonna be a little bit salty with you, but
No, I do. I
okay,
do.
all right. So long-time listener, long-time friend. No, but the producer, the person who put together the beats, did samples, made the sonic sounds, no pun intended, for the album. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to bring to you K Murdoch. K, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having us on, Tim.
Thank you. So I want to jump into it, and I want to start with you, One Up, because one of the things that was really crazy about the album, at least for me, was having to think back to the time when you're sitting in front of your tube TV and you're either on channel 3 or 4 and
Big facts.
and you're like, okay, well, I don't know, you could have did S video too, but who knows. All right. In any way, you're there and you're plugging in. For you to be tapping into that for this album, what was that like for you? And when you started to kind of hear the direction of the album, how did that also help you to bring that part of you into the lyrics?
It's a very good question. If you've ever spent any time with me, people will know that the type of person I am. I like creating memories, and I'm a very nostalgic person.
Right.
And so the actual act of reaching back and pulling on those memories, it wasn't anything difficult for me. It was just something that I naturally would like to do. The hardest part about it was actually picking which memory to use or serve as the basis for that song. So obviously, like the Sonic song, right?
Right.
I've played so many Sonic games. I mean, the first Sonic I played was Sonic 1.
Right.
I played Sonic Spinball. I have Sonic on Game Gear, Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic Adventure.
You're one of the few people in the world where I can't get replacement parts for the Game Gear because you're holding on to it. That's what you're
Yeah,
basically telling me.
I got a Game Gear right up there. Right there.
All right.
But yeah, that's definitely, you know, picking which moment to actually write each song around. You know, in a way that I have to balance being able to tell a story that people can connect with, but also telling a story that is true to myself. And so, you know, finding that delicate balance of picking the correct, not the correct, but the story that kind of straddles both of those sides in a way that, you know, would bring the song to light and do, you know, the work that Kyle did justice was probably the hardest part for me.
Right. I could imagine when you're there trying to encapsulate an emotion, but you're still having the beat to kind of drive you.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be this marriage between what feels right, what sounds right, and also, you know, what's going to make the cut. So, actually, I'll throw this to UK because this is actually perfect. So, in part of creating the sonic structure, what things did you have to consider? Those things you have to think about for a creative mind frame to say, okay, well, yes, I'm dropping this beat, I'm making it this way, but there's a tone that I need to make sure that I can support for whenever he, you know, drops his line. Did you think about any of that process that you were putting things together?
I think the only thing that when I was talking to Creative Mindframe about like the production that he was very adamant about was making sure that you know exactly what I'm about to say is that every track was in a certain beats per minute.
Yeah.
What was the range?
90 like or 85 to 103 or something.
Yeah. He was, but I appreciate that because he was very, you know, and I asked him, I was like, you know, tell me, I don't want it to be like, yo, I'm making these beats and you gonna rap to it.
Right.
Like it is a collaborative thing. Like even, I mean, not so much like the beat making, but that aspect of input that goes into the beat can be, I like to make it more of a open dialogue. So yeah, he was like very adamant about making sure I stay within a certain BPM range. And I was like, okay, well, if I do that, I still within staying in that range, was giving him maybe some different kind of like, well, I don't know, like beats that made him rap a little bit differently and like made him like just push himself.
Right.
The same way that I felt like the challenge was on, okay, taking, because I know he's a Sega fan. I was like taking these things that are so, a lot of people are so endearing to them. And this, anything I sample is always like that, especially like when it comes to stuff like Nintendo and Sega and like childhood stuff. And then turning that into something that you're going to still like and not ruining it for you. Like, man, I love Sonic until I heard you make that beat. Now I hate it. Like,
right.
So it was walking the line. And I feel like that's part of the fun and the challenge for me, because I don't like to, at this point in my life, especially, I don't even like to make music unless it's a bit of a challenge. So it's almost like I pick conceptual stuff to kind of challenge me to do it. And the challenge in this was not only the fact that taking these samples, which I've done before with Forever Famicom, it was just the idea that I know this is going to be compared to Forever Famicom. So it's like, I don't want to ruin people's experience. Like, yo, man, he just fell off after that album. Like, so, but you know, so anyway, I think, and I told him the whole time we were making this, especially during the mixing, I was like, yo, man, like, I'm loving the way this is coming out. And not just because like I got to make it, but it's like, yo, man, this is like really even surpassing my biggest expectations. Because it's just so, I love the way you wrote to these and you really brought stuff to life. And it was a fun project to do, man. So yeah, I guess the biggest thing was definitely just staying in that BPM range and then just making sure, you know, like, also I captured like his, you know, like spirit and energy in a lot of the tracks. Cause I feel like One Up is a very positive dude. He's also very like, he's just a fun guy to be around. But it was also, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself. It was also nice to hear him on certain tracks, push himself and write from a different perspective and write stuff that isn't always like fun, you know what I mean? But just like cover some topics that were serious too. I think people were a little bit shocked, but also like, yo, okay, this dude got range. So
I have to kind of piggyback on that too, because as I was going through the album, and this is more of a nod and a feather in both of your caps.
Mm.
The typical album that's kind of geek nerd centric really stays in the pocket of, I'm going to talk about games or I'm going to talk about comics, and it's like every track carries this one note tone, and yeah, it's the niche, it's the genre, but it's the very few that can take the material and still craft messaging, and this is where I kind of wanted to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Kay. One Up, one song jumped out at me. Like, I'm the type of person that I can only listen to music in my car because everything is perfectly tuned there, and I can hear everything. Even if I go through my monitors, I still hear things better in my car. There's a track that jumped out for me personally, and I wanted to ask you about that. And that was the one about exposure. I'm blanking on the name right now, but um,
Jet Set Radio, keep your exposure.
thank you.
Yeah.
So the thing about that song for me was you really encapsulated the uh, the pain and anguish that all of us as creators have to experience because there's many a person that will love to pay everybody an exposure as if that is the ultimate payment for hard work, creativity, and everything that's under the sun as far as a creative. My question for you is, why did that subject matter to you enough for you to write about it? And where did the music play into saying that this message matched this track?
Man, you are tossing out some really good questions. All right. So to answer your first question, like basically what made me write this song. I'm getting closer to mid 30s than I am, 30 now. And I feel like I've been through things, in my 20s and even into my 30s that I've learned some valuable lessons from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to learn a lesson and continue on and kind of just stay silent and use that lesson to benefit yourself. It's another thing to take that lesson and encourage others not to, fall to the same traps or fate that you have. And so that's kind of where the reasoning behind that song came out. I always tell people, like, one-on-one, I'm like, know your worth. That's what I tell people.
Yep.
What do you value? If you were to pay yourself for your free time, what would you pay yourself? Whether it's art, even people, I had an employee who I told him, I was like, if you're going to look for another job, like, know what you want. Like, you got to know what you value yourself as, because if you don't value yourself, someone else is going to take advantage of seeing that. Right. And you're going to be in a situation where you don't want to be. And so I felt it was very important. Like you said, we all go through it. People are like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. You can be on this thing and enter this contest and you'll spend 10 hours and you'll be lucky enough to get selected as the winner. And I take your art. And it's like, oh, wait, what? Yeah. So I just spent 10 hours and it was just a Ponzi scheme for you to get a bunch of like free artwork. Like, so I feel like that's an important message to say. And because it happens so frequently, it's not you just say it once. Everybody has to repeat it. We have to be united in saying that. And so, yeah, that's kind of where the idea for the song came from. Why did that instrumental evoke that response to write?
Right.
Yeah, I don't even know that.
Yeah, so when you sent it to me and I started listening to it, what I did with every instrumental you sent me is I tried to write like 3 or 4 lines to see what direction I immediately started going into, but didn't finish it, right? So I'd start writing something and I'm like, okay, this is the feeling that I'm getting from this instrumental. This is what I should explore writing this song about. And so that's literally what came out. And I think I remember exactly where I was sitting. I was sitting at our dining room table when you sent it to me and I pulled it up And I think I was doing like some yard work or doing something. And I took a break to sit down, and you sent it to me, and I started writing, and I literally had written in like a 5-minute time span. I wrote like past where a verse or past where a hook would have been. And so that's why I texted you and was like, I think I'm going to do this with no hook.
That's right.
Because like,
you said that.
I was like, I just kept going, and I'm like, I'm going to do it like very chill, like MF Doom type of vibe. And yeah, it's just where it took me. And so I was like, this is where the song needs to go. Right. And it's right. Jet Grind Radio, Jet Set Radio is all about like graffiti art, like, you know,
I can see the connections now.
Yeah. So that's kind of how everything tied together. I guess by chance really is how it happened, but
That's beautiful.
All right. So since now this is illuminating for you, Kay, what do you think?
No, I do recall when told me about that. Yeah, because he was so good with the communication. You know, because not a lot of artists are like that. Sometimes you send people stuff and you like even people I've been in groups with, like in Raw Poetic and Panacea, like it just everyone's different. Like I would send them stuff and sometimes he will reply back immediately like, I got you. I'm about to kill this. And then sometimes I send him stuff and I'm like, man, he didn't like that. And then next time I send him, he'd be like, oh, I finished that joint. And I was like, dude, like you couldn't text me. And he was like, no, I mean, I got you. Like, you know what I mean? So, but I will say that, and forgive me, I have this bad tendency to always, it's not a bad tendency. I might say Manny. And when I say Manny, Emmanuel, I'm referring to One Up. Someone always jokes, is like, yo, you always say people's government names. But I'm like, I can't help it. They're friends. I don't call everyone by their rap monikers. So anyway, Emmanuel, Manny Fresh, as I sometimes call him.
I love it.
He sent me that text and I was like, dude, you should totally do that, because one of the things that we were both conscious about doing this album, in particular, another thing that he was more conscious about, was that he wanted to challenge himself to not always have to feel like he's in that 16 bar verse, 8-bar hook, 16, and then 16, double up the hook and whatever. It's so formulaic. So when he decided to not and just do the whole rest in peace MF Doom stream of consciousness, in a lot of ways I was like, that's going to be awesome, because that's definitely not something that most people are used to hearing from you. And then when I heard it, I was like, his whole tone changed. His voice was like dropped a couple register, because it just sounded like he was talking. Yeah. And I like that. It wasn't like he was rapping it to me. He wasn't, it was like less about performance and more about making sure you got the message. And I loved it. And then, yeah, it's just happenstance. It came together with us using Jet Set Radio as the basis. And then that's why I put also, just to play off Jet Set Radio, you hear the Krylon caps and the spray paint throughout, like the nod to the art, you know what I mean? So that's like one of my favorite tracks. And there's a couple little sound design parts on that I love too, like putting the effect on his voice when he's like, yo, everybody look at me, I'm super special. Like, it's just a lot of like cool little things that I love doing, that kind of stuff. That's kind of like my shtick, you know.
So I want to piggyback on that. This is us getting all producery right now, so I'm sorry for everyone watching. This will be quick. So just little sonic like bits and treats that you threw in there. One, this was post. I take it, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. I never go in. Sometimes I do. Like I have in the back of my mind, but it's usually when I first hear what's sent back to me as a reference. Like that happens a lot when I work with Mega Man. He'll send me stuff and I'm like, bing, gotta add this in. Yeah. So in the case of One Up, it was, or Creative Mind Frame, it was the same thing. Like also too, it's like I don't want to just be a beat maker. Like I want to produce a song. So you're gonna hear things, changes in there. A little sonic ID sound design is like essentially what it is that I try to add in.
So my question for you, One Up, is when you heard the mix, and we'll stick on this track because this has a lot of synergy here.
Mhm.
When you heard the mix, what was your initial thought? And then when you heard it together as a complete album, where did you find that it fit amongst the other songs?
Um, so when I heard the mix, as he sent tracks, I kind of had in my head how I wanted the progression of the album to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you notice, it starts off a lot more, hey, this is a gamey album, right?
Yeah.
And then as you get towards the end,
Yeah.
it starts getting to
It gets
kind of
really
the
personal in the slide. Yeah.
and like the more here's your education topics.
Yeah.
So when I first heard the mix, um, with all the mixes, actually, to be completely honest, I thought they were so good that I would have been fine if he would have just mixed on that. And then he would send stuff back. Like he actually sent like 2 or 3 different versions back where he'd add something in, right? The extra sound bites. And I'm like, oh, and then he'd like switch up, something on one of the beats, maybe drop out some of the drums or like add a synth. And I'm like, oh, so it was like every single track, not just that one, was like, the Nights one, the Streets of Rage one, like getting
that was
hear
really good production wise on that one. I really liked it.
Oh,
he
thanks,
killed
man.
it.
Yeah.
Like just getting to, I mean, imagine being at the point where like even at the base level of what he sent, you were excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get another one that's a little bit better and you get excited about that. And then you sometimes got 2 more that like it's stair stepped up each time. So yeah, I mean, just getting to experience, that's like watching your friend get to experience your favorite anime for the first time, because it's like, this is, oh man, I wish I could experience that. Right. That was me. Like I got to re-experience it every time. So yeah, as far as that goes, it was amazing. The track list didn't really change that much. We had a very, very short, like 1-day conversation, texting back and forth about what we thought it should be. But, we were both pretty much in agreement, pretty well aligned on that.
And I'll say too, just to piggyback off that, like just as much as he got hyped off the mixes, I guess was sent, because I just thought about it. If I look back at our messages or text log, it's just like you could tell I wake up early because I'm like, my ears are clean. I just start like fresh. So it's like, while I'm super creative and while my ears can stand it, I'll start mixing. So I would send Manny mixes and I was like, oh, I forgot he's on Central Time. Yeah. So I don't even know if he's up, but when he gets up, he'll hear the mix. But on top of that, the way I was feeding him mixes that were hopefully getting him energized and excited, he was doing the same, sending back the videos that he was making. I was like, asking him, I was like, dude, how did you make some of these videos? And he's like, I just got a green screen and just
right there.
He was like doing this stuff like in the middle of like breaks on his work day. I was like, who the F are you, dude? Like his multitasking ability is out of this world, man. So I always take my hat off to him. I do it now, but I have it was a bad hair day. Hence I'm wearing a hat. But and I'm known for bad dad jokes. But anyways, I mean, like, so it was like it was a lot of reciprocity with that, in the sense of like, I would send him stuff to get him amped and he would send me back the visuals. And it was awesome because I was like doing my thing and he was working on something too. And we were all working to make this like a collaborative, cool kind of multimedia thing. And I'm really, honestly, it's probably the best. As an engineer, I feel like that might be some of my best, if not my best album. Like, and that, which feels good to say, because I'm like, this is my latest, as opposed to like, I'm still trying to make stuff I did in the early 2000s. like that ain't it, Jack. You know what I mean? So
I love the collaborative effort. That was one of the things that I wanted to touch on with this album too, because okay, I don't know if all of you that are watching right now understand. Like, we are completely using the internet. Like, we are in different places, different time zones, and that also meant that the album was made in different time zones, because that's just the way things are now. I wanted to touch on that because not only as producer and talent, you worked collaboratively from a distance. You also had features, and those came in, and I know that there's tons of extra work to make sure you get a feature to sound even remotely like the person's in the same room. So my question goes out to both of you, and I want to start with you, One Up, because you have, in my opinion, the hardest part of the two, because you got to throw bars and have your bars either meet or exceed someone else's bars. You can't see someone else writing their bars, so you're not in the same space to make sure that your bars are up to the level. What was that like to work with an artist from a distance and still have some type of synergy in tone and breadth and depth and all of that? Like, what was that like for you?
Man, these are really good questions. The positive aspect of the collaborations that we did is I'm trying to think of anyone besides for Prowess who I had not worked with before. I think she's the only person on the album who I have not done at minimum 2 or 3 songs with before.
Last Benevolence, right? Had you done anything with him, with DJ?
I guess I'm trying to think.
I mean, you've been on projects with him, but
yeah, I guess no, you're right. I don't think I've done. I've had O Super on some of my albums, but I had him feature with other people as well. So I guess, yeah, you're right. There are 3 people on there. I mean, Prowess stands out to me the most because case in point, I mean, I'm just glad that her verse was last and I was first. Because I was like, don't put me back to that, please. Oh man. So it definitely is difficult though, because like you have to be extremely mindful of the information that you give people, right? I was very, with each of the tracks, I'm a business excellence manager. That's what I do for my full-time job. So process engineering, operational excellence. And so like I try to be very clear and distinct with people when I'm not giving direction, but at least asking them to do something so that I give them the most accurate information so that they can run and do what they need to do, but also not just be wildly off. And so I think that we did, because we had a solid grasp on what we were trying to do with most all of the songs, it made that a lot easier, right? When we reached out about Streets of Rage, we're like, hey, this is the direction that we're trying to go. Pick a character. You have kind of free reign. You can go beat them up, or you can slide whatever messages you want in there. With Phantasy Star, it's like we're sticking strictly to the game, talk about the game. And we were very upfront about that. So there weren't any surprises about like the content that people brought in.
Right.
But you're right. There's always that worry is like, is this person about to come in here and crush me on my own album? Like you're just like biting your nails. And, I know with, like I said, I've done songs with a lot of them. So I always know that a track I'm going to do with Desh, a track I'm going to do with Ran. Like I'm not, I was talking to Rand about this on his podcast. It's like, what do you tell people, if they're looking at Forever Famicom, they're like, and then they're looking at Sega City. I'm like, the first thing I tell them, I'm not Rand, right? Like, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. And so when I do tracks with them, I make sure I focus on like the parts that I'm good at so that it's a supplement. Right. I'm not trying to be like, okay, I'm gonna go bar for bar with Raheem or Ryan. Like it's because it's not gonna happen, right?
Right.
And like, part of being able to excel at anything is understanding, where your weaknesses or your limitations are. And like my strengths are in the storytelling and, I'm really good at hooks. And so like in those songs, I focused on doing those things so that it was more of a thing that we did together to make an excellent product. So long-winded answer. Yeah, it was hard.
Simple answer. It was complicated, but we had processes and procedures in place.
Exactly.
We followed our SOPs and we did everything.
Yeah, this man. Let's go.
Hey, look, it helps though. Like that, his background. I mean, even on other projects that I work with, Emmanuel on, like when my album Hero Music 2.
Yep.
There was so many collaborations on that album, and I had a feeling just based on knowing him up to that point and knowing his background and how just like, how good he is with this being organized. And Shore's, you know what? He was one of the last people I sent out tracks to, and he was one of the first I got it back from. And I was like, man, this like, thank you. I love you, man. You are the best. So when it came to this album, actually, like, yeah, that ability to stay organized and on top of stuff. I mean, I would text him about stuff that I should probably be more on top of, because I was like, well, I know Manny's gonna know, so let me just shoot him a text. And he was very cool about everything and like super organized. So for anyone listening who is gonna who likes working with artists who are just really take their stuff seriously and are really good about time management, create a mind frame.
I appreciate that, as I was late to this interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing's 100% though.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do the follow-up question with UK, and that's about making everything, tonally sound, like getting that tone, that timbre, and all that good stuff.
Nice.
Was it as much of a challenge as it seemed to have been to have all of these different registers come in to put them into the mix? Or did you find it that since there was already working relationships, it kind of just melded together? What was your experience?
I mean, definitely on the engineering part, like I think it was more of a challenge than like thinking about how these people are going to sound, because a lot of them, like Creative Mind Frame said, they had all worked together. So it like aside from like prowess and I mean, everyone else was like somewhat like NPC, like, or relatively in like the nerd, the blurred family, you know what I mean?
Right.
That we roll in. And even Prowess is in there now. Like she's really asserted herself and become one of like the people you need to know about. So, so I think more the challenge just was more when it came to engineering. It was funny because it was 10 songs on the album, and I started off mixing. I think I was like, okay, I'm knocking out all the songs that is just Manny first, because I know those are going to be easier, because I came up with like a template, like with the compression, EQ, and other things I do to his voice. And I save it as a template in Pro Tools, or just like presets and different plugins that I use. And maybe I'll do a Twitch on that one day. I don't know how many people are into that
there
stuff.
is no maybe.
Okay.
Do or do not. There is no try.
There you go.
But so once I got his stuff dialed in, it was easy. I mean, obviously every song was different. So like even when I put stuff on him, I had to make sure that his voice sat in the mix of the other elements, like the music, right? Because I didn't make that. That was like a novice engineering mistake I would have made 15 years ago, where you think you have this one shot magic bullet that is applicable to every type of beat, which is not the case. Trial by fire. So it was when I started getting stuff from like Last Benevolence and Oh Super. And sometimes stuff I could tell recorded on decent mics, and some stuff sound like it was recorded maybe on like, not on an iPhone per se, but like just obviously people aren't in treated studios and rooms. So it's like, okay, I know I gotta like deal with that and taking a little bit of that room reverb out. And then maybe some people's voices are just more bassier. Some people I had to scoop more mid-range out. Some people need to be have more higher end, but maybe someone like Prowess, not too much, because their voice gets too sibilant. So I'll spare you some more of the engineering mumbo jumbo, but for the most part, it's like stuff I had to take into consideration. And so I think it was the Streets of Rage track and the Fantasy Star track were definitely, and also the last track with D&D Sluggers was like were tracks that, actually I take it back. Every track that had someone guesting, singing, or like doing a verse, except for Rand, because I work with him enough where I have settings for him too. All those songs were like, okay, I had to roll up my sleeves and spend a lot of time. Particularly on the Daytona track, the second track with IQ, because I was going through so many iterations of that chorus, because I wanted him to sound full, but at the same time he can sing, but he's not like a trained singer. So it's like making sure his personality conveys and is able to carry the hook. So yeah, man, I spent I did a lot of mixes that I didn't even send you many.
I bet.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm really happy once that came out right, and I gave it like I don't listen to my car. Well, sometimes I do, but I usually listen through AirPods or EarPods because if it translates there, it's like listening on crappy speakers. It can translate really well. And once I like did I usually take a walk and listen to mixes I did, and I was like, okay, this is it. We're good to go. So
It's kind of funny you say that because one of the things that I really love to listen to, especially when it comes to sample music, is the samples themselves. So I want to kind of travel the conversation into that. First things first, I have to say this before I forget. I love your muddy drums. Like every time I kept listening to these drums, I was just like, they're so muddy and they're dirty and they're gritty and it has just this undertone of pound which really pushes everything up. I was just like, it made everyone sound brighter, and I was like, I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Cool.
With that being said, samples. I mean, we're talking about a Sega album, so this is where I get to have a little bit of fun with you guys. You're listening to tons and tons and tons of Sega material because one, you've been raised on it, and now two, you have to select certain bits and pieces that are going to be, the bed for the song for these tracks. Whoever wants to jump at this first, what was the one sample that you heard in any track that was your, how do I put it, your quick ticket back to your youth? Like what thing did you hear? And it was like, I remember finish the line.
Daytona probably for me. I remember playing that game on Sega Saturn with my best friend Davey. He used to come over. He had a Sega Saturn too. He actually was the main reason I kind of became more of a Sega head because he was in my ear like, yo, you got to get Panzer Dragoon. And it's funny, another song on there, the song that sampled Clockwork Night, he was the one who hit me to Clockwork Night. There was another song that I didn't even sample that I really wanted to call A Stall that we used to play. There was a lot of Sega Saturn games that I probably could have gone through and just made the whole thing Sega Saturn because that was my stuff. But yeah, anyway, Daytona though, that theme, if anyone who's played Daytona for Sega Saturn knows, there's two parts that always I think about is the Rolling Star off the first level. That was originally what I was going to sample. And I was like, yo, this is, it would have been dope, but I tried to flip it, but it just didn't work out. So then I was like, okay, I also like the song Sky High. I wanna fly. Yeah. I'm not going to sing it because it sounds like a Japanese dude who's been like kicked in the balls. Like, but it works. Like I love, and that level is hard. It's the hardest, the most expert level on the game. But anyway, so when I did that, I sampled it. It made me think about playing with my best friend Davey, us taking turns seeing who had the fastest time on that game. But and shout out whoever that is, that Japanese singing.
hopefully your bottom half of your body is fine. Shout out to you.
I mean, y'all know what I mean. I just can't sing in a register, and it just sounds so. But anyone who hears that riff knows like the blue skies, like it's so awesome, man. And like the great thing about Sega Saturn, it was like right when PlayStation and stuff was coming out. So like it was the first time you were hearing CD quality music in a video game and hearing like songs and not just bleeps and bloops of like a digitized compressed voice. So anyway, it just took me back to being when Saturn came out, I was like 16. I mean, not to date myself, but I guess I did. So
just before you go creative, I wanted you to sample. This is my selfishness. I wanted you to sample Daytona. So I don't know. I don't remember if on the Saturn it did this, but I used to work in arcades back in the day. So every time I start the machines in the morning, you'd hear rolling start, and then after that you hear Daytona.
Oh, yes. I didn't think about that.
So that was just me being selfish.
People have asked about us doing like DLC or like a continuation. So I mean, if there's enough fandom, man, I'm definitely not opposed to it. Like it was super fun,
Well, I
and
got
there
a
was a
request
lot of
of a couple
stuff.
of games. I'll
Yeah.
save that for later.
Okay. Okay.
All
Save it.
right.
I'll save the till I make a formal Twitter solicitation. Like
There we go.
CMF, what you got?
Mine's definitely got to be the Sega, the startup thing, because like I mean, it's
you mean this?
exactly.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever played a Sega Genesis was so my mom used to babysit these kids sometimes. We'd go over to their house
I
and
love
she would
these
just
stories.
she'd
All right, go for it.
take me with her, and they had a Sega, and so that was like my first time. I was, oh man, it had been like, I want to say I was like 4 or 5 because I wasn't in school yet, so I had to be really young.
Okay.
And they had a Sega and they had Sonic, and like I just remember like every time she had to babysit them, I was like, oh, this is the best thing ever, because we go over it, and then like the second that happened, I was like, yes. And so like I mean, that just clearly had to, that's what popped in my head immediately whenever he sent the instrumental, was that. And then the story about our neighbor, he was a student at the University of Buffalo, and he ended up moving to, I want to say like the Bahamas, moving back to the Bahamas. He was a foreign student, international student, and like my dad as well. And so he was just like getting rid of all this stuff, and I was literally like walking home like with my bike, and he's like, hey, I'm like, what's up? He's like, do you want a video game? I was like, yeah, this is me. Like, I should have been kidnapped so many times. No, but my parents knew him, so I was like, okay, you know. I just like literally just like walk into this house, and he just puts a Sega in a box and just puts all his stuff. He's just packing up, getting ready to go.
Wow.
And I just like literally walked across the street back to our apartment carrying this Sega, and I was like, and I kept waiting. I was like, something's gonna happen. He's gonna be like, no, psych, no.
Psych.
I was just running home. I'm like, this is my Sega now, son.
That's dope. I think the sound that I heard that took me, actually no, it wasn't even the sound. It was just you mentioning it, and it brought a tear to my eye. And it was just the love for the Dreamcast.
Mm.
Like mine is in my entertainment center, still connected. I still play Power Stone to this day. I love Power Stone.
Let's go. Let's go.
Oh, we'll figure it out. I got to get you too, because I've been watching you play Rocket League, and I got you. I'm just saying. Nah, you probably will wipe the floor with me, but you know we're old school. We must talk a lot of trash, even if we can't play.
Exactly.
But no, this just the whole thing of dipping into the catalog of Sega, and just finding those pockets of either a certain game or a certain console that spoke to you, and it's just the history of what the system has been. I want to ask this of both of you, and this is about your favorite track. So if you could pick one, this is your baby. You know that you're going to throw out the bathwater with the rest, but you're picking one. What track goes home with you and you raise it to be your very best child?
That's like taking it to another level.
Let's see who jumps in the water first.
I'll go first because I don't know.
You know, I'm really happy with the way the Shining Force track came out. Just because, I mean, I love Shining Force. I very vividly remember sitting in my the old apartment we lived at when I was growing up. Like it was the summer of like '94, playing Shining Force, I think 2, which I sampled on the album, and listening to that music mixed with the mixture of Mobb Deep. Totally, they had nothing to do with anything, but it was just like one of those things where it's like, man, hip hop and video games have definitely been like, when I think about where I was in time, I can tell you like what I was playing and what I was listening to.
Right.
So, and I always remember the music from Shining Force. On top of the game, it's just still one of my favorite tactical RPGs. Right up there with like Final Fantasy Tactics. But as far as the reason why I really like the song is because if you really listen to what Creative Mindframe is saying, even though finally we got this demon out the office,
Yeah.
You got to think some of that song was written back in like early fall, if not summer. I feel like so it's pretty prophetic. Like some of the stuff you were saying, like raising demon kids and stuff. I was like, yo, this is
Which
like
is a really great hook.
Thank you. I told you my strengths. I do hooks. That's what I do.
You nailed it, man. And that was another song too. I was like, wow, this is totally out. This is not indicative of stuff he would normally do. You know what I mean? And I love the fact that it shows that this is not just a guy who raps about Power Rangers and loving RPGs and stuff like that. Like he's showing you he's just as much in tune to what's happening outside of the console as well, but still able to tie it and make this allegory. And I love the hook. I didn't know how the beat was gonna like be received because I was like, yo, I like it, but he might not even write to it. So that would be what do we call that? Because I'm so used to calling these tracks like by what I titled them. What do we call that track?
Mind Control.
Mind Control, yeah. And it's totally applicable. Like it's a perfect title. So that or Shot Today, the Clockwork Night track, or like that's like a close second, but I think Mind Control really is just one that I was like, wow. Like when I listen to the lyrics, I'm like, this is eerily prophetic. So anyway, yeah.
Man, that's tough. This is tough for me.
Only one. There must be one.
Because I keep bouncing between Nights and Comic Zone. I want to say Nights. And I think because Nights is like Nights is just a cool game. I remember the first time I played it was at a Sears, and they had like a Sega Saturn setup. It was when they were getting ready to do the launch, right?
Yeah. With the pad, didn't it have like that cool analog pad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I remember playing it there and thinking like, wow, this is so cool. You just get to fly around, like do things, and
soundtrack was dope.
Soundtrack was amazing. It was like literally just magic to, an elementary school kid.
Right.
But like that coupled with 2020 was hard. So I was happy to like roll in and have some positive messages for people, right, on this album, because 2021 is going to be hard too, but at least it can be on the up and up. And so I think that like between just liking the game a lot and liking the story behind it, but then also like what we actually did and like the hook on that too is like just never give up, right? Keep going. So yeah, that's what I would pick, and then Comic Zone close second.
All right, cool. So I have to ask this question because this is basically how the album starts. We now went from the back of the album now to the front of the album. 2 years.
3 actually.
3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so why?
Because brother was doing things. No, I don't know. It wasn't, the onus wasn't on, or the reason for the delay was definitely not on Creative Mindframe. It was definitely on me, and it's probably why I even outed myself by putting that on there with the. I put 2 years later. Well, it's 2 years from that message, but he's right. Like we started talking about this album at MagFest. That started 2018. So I remember specifically going to.
Wait.
It was back. It was. Oh wait, no. You're right. It was the MagFest 2018, and that message was right after that.
Yeah,
it was like the March or something of that year. Okay, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, I remember me, you, MC Oma, and Kadesh all went to like a bagel, like to get like food at like a breakfast place and talk. It's funny. Talk about, I feel like it's always like Groundhog's Day. Talk about the status of the NPC and plans, which never always materialize, but whatever. Anyway, but obviously out of that conversation, look what happened. I mean, it took some years, but I feel like the other thing is that I was definitely at a place the last couple of years where people were like, "What have you been doing?" I was like, "Well, I've been, like taking care of my family, and
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 kids, and now I'm at a place now, like with my current situation, working for Vice, where I'm doing sound design and stuff, where I don't have to work. I was working a lot of jobs. Like I had a full-time, I had a part-time.
Yep.
I was teaching in 3 different places.
Yep.
Like it's pretty amazing. Now I think about the fact that I'm alive because, and didn't burn out, because I really thought, and my wife used to say, like, what in the hell are you doing? Like, we love that you are working so hard, but don't work so hard that you burn out. So, but it paid off because I got hired, and because of Vice, I don't have to do all that other stuff. And part of my job is that I get basically paid to compose music. So it's funny, a lot of stuff that I compose now, I just did a piece for Vice that'll be coming out on a podcast about the military and video games. And in it, they mentioned Sega. So, I had to drop the beat that we did for Sega in there. Yeah. So I mean,
is this the one that's airing this week?
No, it's that's in the video one, the show Reset.
Yeah,
there's
Reset.
An audio podcast version on the Vice News Reports podcast that I'm a sound designer on.
Nice.
Where it's like more of a deep dive. So yeah, you'll hear it. I'll tell you all about it and post it and stuff. But it's cool that a lot of stuff that I get to do, even in my leisure, still pops up in my regular work. So now that I'm more secure and stable, I can get back to kind of doing music, what I was doing like it for originally, which is just because I like doing it, as opposed to like a lot of the music I was doing was like freelance stuff. And it was definitely like engineering, like helping mix and master people's albums.
Right.
And that time, that bandwidth was eating away at me being able to do my own creative stuff. So ironically, as soon as I got hired this fall, the first project I was like, I gotta finish wound up being Sega City. And I'm just so happy with the way it turned out. Like, very thankful that people supported it,
And I'll wrap with you on this creative. So we'll correct ourselves and we'll say 3 years. So 3 years in the making, from ideation to we're now on Twitch, celebrating the release. What's your thoughts now?
I'm glad we took 3 years to do it.
Thank you.
I'm not even gonna lie, because here's the thing: some of those tracks would not have existed had we not taken 3 years to do this. True. If you look at the first time I started doing stuff that was like a lot less gamey and pandery, would be leading up to. I mean, I'll be completely. I'm honest. If there's one thing I for sure am, is gonna be honest. But it would be when I started doing the Dirty 30s album, right? And it was like, I just want to make songs about stuff I want to make songs about, right? So I had been doing for 7 years, 8 years at that point. Everything was like video games, anime, nerdy stuff. And it happened to be that was the stuff that I wanted to make songs about in that time period. And I had hit this split where I was like, okay, well, there are other things now that I want to make songs about.
Right.
So let me test the waters with this and see if I enjoy it. And so had we not actually taken the time to do this after I did my Dirty 30s album, then I can pick, let's see, Clockwork probably wouldn't have been on here. Shining, it would have been on there, but it would have been approached from a completely different creative direction.
You think you would have rapped like, I'm in the RPG and that?
Yeah, exactly. I took myself to the hat store today and I got myself a hat. I mean, that would have been like the second verse of the Sega probably wouldn't have been in there. Like, it would have just been like straight gamey through, right? And like, it's one of those scenarios or one of those instances where it's the universe has a plan for you. And that's right. For both of us, it was better for us to do this album at a later date. And so while it may have come up as an idea, all fun and dandy, but it wasn't our time to release it until this year. And specifically the product you see is why.
I like that. It feels very J Electronica, where it's like,
okay. Wow,
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's the whole thing of, we know what can be done. but the timing just wasn't there because it just was not the right time. But when the right time hits, you know you're getting something that is going to make you feel like the time was well worth it.
Mm.
So for me, being a fan of just the genre and knowing what was coming down the pike, I was waiting for this. I didn't know what this was, but I was waiting for it. And
Nice.
so, oh, absolutely. And so, I'm happy that this took a ride for, baking in the oven for 3 years, because that means that you had more context to really round it out. So, as a fan, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that we're fortunate that it was an album where it was two friends as well creating something.
Mhm.
Because I think if it were like, I'm not like taking jabs or anything, but if it was like maybe some YouTube collaboration album, I don't know how tight knit those guys are. So I'm just using that as like a generalization. But if it were just something where it's people collabing for the sake of exposure, or like, let's do some numbers, right?
Right.
Mm.
It probably
Right.
And it
would've
happens
been-
a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, we're fortunate that we're friends. We spend, a lot of time together, well, as much as we could when we're at shows. Now coronavirus, but and so, the creation of the album was for us to just create something that we could both stand behind, and that, we hoped people would enjoy, but at its core, we were proud of it. And so, whether it takes a year to do something like that, 3 years or 5 years, we were fortunate that, I guess, our goal and our intentions were aligned and, positive too.
I like that. Let's wrap with this last question. This is a what if situation.
Mm.
So it is reported that Microsoft made a very huge attempt at buying Sega. And while we don't know if that will ever come to fruition, let's just say that it does. Which franchise that you've covered on this album would you like Microsoft to take control of and try to move it to that next level?
Comic Zone.
Really?
I could see that. Yeah, that would be cool. Or, honestly, I just mentioned it, Shining Force. I love, and I know there's no shortage of like tactical RPGs. Like everyone now has kind of transitioned more into like a Disgaea kind of vibe. Some people, and obviously there's still the JRPG is still in effect with Persona and stuff like that. But that tactical war simulation mixed with like the old fantasy thing of like, it's simple, very formulaic, but I feel like Shining Force, man. And I'm always a sucker for games that have a lot of characters, and Shining Force had a lot of characters, even though a lot of them were just like, this is a guy and this is a girl version of the same character. But I don't know. I really was into that and really into like, okay, how am I going to get from here to there with these people? You know what I mean? Like, so I would love to see, man, Shining Force done on like one of these next gen systems. I think it would look amazing. But yeah, Comic Zone, even when I was looking at gameplay the other day, Comic Zone still looks dope, man. It was so ahead of its time. Like,
It was.
yeah. So Jet Set Radio, all of them, really.
Ooh, Jet Set, yes. Ooh, I skipped that one.
So how about for you?
Oh, for me?
Yes. You said
Yeah,
Comic Zone.
Comic Zone and Jet Set Radio would be the ones.
Okay.
Comic Zone, like dope story, just like Kyle said, it was ahead of its time. So like, I mean, get the original people back together and give them, today's technology and see what they can twist out of it. I mean, because you have to be creative to come up with a concept like that.
Right.
And then Jet Set Radio was so dope. I love like roller skating, shoot. My wife and I ordered some roller skates. I'm about to be out here jam skating again, bringing it back.
Skating backwards and all of that.
Yep. And I'm talking not the inlines. Like we got
you got to get the
Exactly.
skates. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, those are definitely the two that I would pick. I think that, I mean, it was just the story of Jet Set. It went over my head a lot when I was younger, but it still had a really good story. If you go back and play it now, but just like, I don't know, there's like no game like it. Like, it's Tony Hawk crossed with like art graffiti, like tossed with like actual fighting. Like, it's almost like you combined Tony Hawk and Streets of Rage together with like Mario Paint.
I like that.
And cell shaded graphics. Like,
yeah. So yeah,
I think those are excellent choices. Just to throw out an opinion on one, I think I would love to see an Echo the Dolphin.
Okay. I was just about to say, I was like, is he gonna say Echo the Dolphin?
I was the only reason why I'm leaning into Echo is because of Sea of Thieves.
Okay.
I just would like to see what they would try to do for what we can't see in that game with Echo, because that would be a really interesting twist. Of course, Sonic, but that's Sonic.
yeah. Always tried Sonic though. Like,
But this was such a great time, and I want to thank both of you for making the time, for making this happen. Yeah, the album is I think you described it best. It's levels. Like, you start off at one spot and then you end off, you crescendo at another. The progression is just it had me banging my head by the end of the album. I was like, oh,
Nice.
I'm good.
thank you.
I'm good. So, creative my friend K Murdoch, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for making the time to do this interview, and thank you for producing what I feel is one of those great albums that stay in rotation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course, man. Anytime, Tim. And shout out to Chico, who I know couldn't be here. I was kind of looking for a lot of people don't know. Chico and me went to elementary school together.
Oh, word.
He's been a homie literally for 30 plus years. Like,
Life.
And again, B Squad. Like, I'm glad you're shouting him out, but you're making it very obvious that I was not enough.
oh, come on,
That
man.
was okay.
No, that's come on. You said I didn't even tune in. Every time I look at the show, it's funny even seeing you all's rapport with one another, because Chico's like the king of the side eye sarcasm. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, what can you say about Chico?
Yeah.
That hasn't been already said. See, I could do that because he's not here and he can't defend himself. All right, but guys, thank you so much for being on the show, and let me go ahead and close this thing out. There you have it, our very first interview for 2021, and hopefully there will be many more excellent interviews. I mean, who knows who we'll be able to get, but we're going to try to get anybody that is awesome and know that you guys will love them. So for Chico, for Chris, for Kristen, when they return, of course, you'll see their smiling faces. I am Tim, and as always, this is ILNL.